Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk here on WABC Radio Podcast. My name is Kevin Schroeder, retired NYPD detective, and I'm here with my co-host, Captain retired Ed Mehmet.
Welcome, WABC listeners, to another episode of Cop Talk.
So today, our guest is Congressman Anthony D'Esposito. He's the 4th Congressional District is his district, and he covers, I believe, the town of Hempstead as well as the city of Long Beach. He serves on some House committees. One is the Homeland Security House Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure House Administration as well. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. Pleasure to be part of Cop Talk.
Thank you. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit of your background? I know you were a former NYPD and, of course, now in politics. So if you could just tell us a little bit of your background, that would be great.
Yeah, so born and raised in the 4th Congressional District in Island Park. I still live the same place I was raised. I went to school here in Island Park. Went to Chaminade High School, graduated there. Went to Hofstra, and after graduating Hofstra, joined the NYPD. Did my entire career in the 7-3, retired out of the 7-3 squad. Had a pretty active career. I always say it's a job that I miss each and every day. In 2016, I was given the opportunity to join the Hempstead Town Board, which the town of Hempstead is actually the largest town in the nation, bigger than, I think, 7 states by population. So I represented the town of Hempstead from 2016 to 2023. And then in 2022, I ran in the 4th Congressional District. It was a seat that was held by Democrats for the last 25 years, a seat that Joe Biden won in 2020 by 16.5 points. And we were able to not only win it, but win it by 4 points, which is a good margin. And it's been an interesting ride. And I have to say, my career in the NYPD, I always say that I know my parents wouldn't want to hear this, but it was probably the best education that I could get for entering government and politics.
Wow. So, Congressman, what made you get involved in law enforcement? What made you want to become a police officer?
So, born and raised, like I said, in Island Park. I spent my late teenage years, early 20s, bartending in places like Long Beach and Island Park. I know we have some mutual friends that have done the same and been part of some of those places. And
yes.
It's just, listen, it's all about public service. I think the NYPD is one of those storied institutions, and getting into law enforcement and being part of that family is like something that I really think is no other. So, joining law enforcement, I met some of the greatest people I've ever met. I think we would all agree, probably have some of the greatest stories. Some we could tell, some we can't. But it was the ride of a lifetime, and truly, as they say, it was a front row seat to the greatest show on earth.
What are your fond memories? What are some of your favorite memories from being on the NYPD, working in the 7-3 precinct?
Right now, I think, and this happens pretty regularly, especially at night when we're finishing up a late session in Congress, and I walk out of the Capitol building and walk down those, monstrous steps, and I look back at the Capitol building, and I have such different feelings. One is, it's such an honor to be there. How did I get here? And then to think back, like in 2005, 2006, I was standing a footpost on Rockaway Avenue and Livonia Avenue. And now my neighbors have given me the honor of representing them in the halls of Congress. It's amazing. But thinking back, some of the investigations that I was a part of, we were part of probably the first large-scale investigation in the NYPD that utilized social media, taking down 2 warring gangs in Brownsville in the PSA-2, the projects that encompassed PSA-2. We were able to arrest 43 members of the gang for conspiracy to commit murder. And that was really at a time when social media was just getting started. And a lot of the older guys in the squad, thought it was BS. It was something that we would never utilize. And, it was one of the first cases where we now started taking Facebook profile pictures and creating photo arrays with them, because that was the only way we could identify these individuals. So, some of my fondest memories are things like that, traveling with those that we've able to become family with in the department, traveling to police week, going on different trips with the men and women that we served with, and just being part of that family, of that, having that camaraderie. And obviously there are good memories and there are bad memories. When we lose those that we love, our fallen heroes, those are always things that stick with us forever. I think you remember where you were, what you were doing exactly at the moment that you found out that happened. And just, the kidding around and the busting each other's chops, the things that can only happen amongst law enforcement, that's the stuff that you miss.
Exactly. And the 7-3 was busy. Actually, I'm sure it's still a very busy precinct, the 7-3 in Brooklyn.
Yeah, it is. It was busy then. It's busy now. It's I think it's one of those few places in Brooklyn and probably throughout the city that you'll never see that turnaround. You'll never see that gentrification. It's just it's very tall. The 7-3 was only a square mile, but it was, I think, the most concentrated of housing in the whole city. So we had our fair share of interesting days and nights.
Yes. That brings me to my next question. What drew you to get involved in politics?
So, coming into the times around, I guess, 2013, 2014, when you think about the change that we saw in our city with our leadership, or I should say lack of leadership, where it seems like it has progressed to becoming the popular thing to fight against law enforcement, to disrespect the uniform, to give the criminals more rights than those who are defending and holding that line. When we had so many people that were elected across this country, literally taking the handcuffs out of our gun belts and putting them on cops, restricting them from doing their job, I just thought to myself, there needs to be more of us, more law enforcement, more people that have the street smarts, that have lived different lives. Not saying that they do a bad job, but there's, for too long been people who have just been career politicians and kind of groomed to do that job. I think you need people with real life experience. You need people who have, walked the streets of real bad neighborhoods and affected change and understand how to talk to people and sat in a car with, I think we would all agree that we've had partners on this job that, we came from different economic backgrounds, different color skin, different religions, certainly different political ideologies, but our lives depended on them. Their lives depended on us. And we got out of that car and we did our job. We took guns off the street. We put bad people behind bars. And I think we needed more of them in government. And, I had the opportunity again to join the Hempstead Town Board, which was great. It was working on a local level, got to really understand how government works. I mean, it was local government, but pretty big operation. Our budget was about $500 million a year. We maintained 1,200 miles of roadway, close to 3,000 full-time employees. So it was a big operation. And then when given the opportunity to run for Congress, I think now more than ever, we need individuals like the three of us who have worn the uniform representing us in different forms of government. And, I truly believe that the work that I've done, the things that I've seen in the NYPD really is helpful to the committees that I serve, especially, I serve on the House Homeland Security Committee, which was a committee that, Peter King from Long Island served on from the days that committee was started. And I truly believe that it's always a spot where a New Yorker needs to sit. And luckily, we have 3 New Yorkers sitting on at least on the Republican side, on the House Homeland Security Committee. You have myself, Andrew Garbarino, and Nick LaLota, who all represent Long Island, all respect law enforcement, and all serve on that committee. And, I was one of the few freshmen given a chairmanship, and I serve as the chairman of the subcommittee in Homeland Security on Emergency Management and Technology, which handles all the grant funding, all FEMA, a lot of the initiatives that we see in the NYPD and other law enforcement agencies stem through that subcommittee. So I really believe that, why did I get involved in this? Why did I? Because I think we need more of us to really hold that line and to be the louder voice. When people think about New York, they think about, people like AOC with the loud voices, anti-cop rhetoric. Well, now we have some more loud voices speaking on our behalf, and I think we need more of them.
You know, you mentioned the 73rd Precinct. I grew up in that neighborhood, as did my father. And in my early days as a sergeant, I was the second whip of the squad. To those who are listening, the second whip would be the sergeant supervisor of the squad. I was not the commanding officer. And I was there in the days of the Black Liberation Army. There was a lot of hot activity there. In fact, one of my fondest memories was a mailman comes into the detective squad with a bag, and in the bag are sticks of dynamite. And he said that he was delivering mail, and he was standing on something. It felt like rolling logs. And he walks in with dynamite. And then a few days later, we find dynamite against the wall below our office window. So it was a pretty wild place. I can relate very well to it. Also, you know, you follow in the footsteps of two other New York police people that I can think of. The first in Congress. The first one was a inspector named Freddie Heineman. I guess it was about 40 years ago. And then you had Mario Biaggi. So
right.
I don't know if you're the third or the fourth, but I think Heineman.
I believe I'm number 3, but the first NYPD detective.
Well, the first congressman that I recall in my career that came from the police department was Fred Heineman. So, you know, it's very nice that we have people from the police department because they bring a wealth of knowledge. Like you say, it's the greatest show on earth. Now, I want to ask you this. Recently, you introduced a federal bill, a Bill of Rights for law enforcement that strengthened the legal protection of officers and condemns calls to defund and abolish the police. What inspired you to introduce the bill? What's the current status of the bill?
So the bill passed as a rule, and what inspired me was everything that I think we hear about and read about and see each and every day. You take the department that I think the three of us love very much, and you talk to people that were generational in the NYPD. They are legacies that continue for. And go back a long ways. And when individuals like that, whose father was on the job, grandfather, great-grandfather was on the job, and they're at the breaking point where they're not telling their children and grandchildren to join our ranks, I think that's a real problem. Because our job and the legacies that we're created in them I really truly believe it's part of the very fabric of everything that we hold dear. And we see in especially blue states and blue cities throughout this country where the police departments and law enforcement are just held. People and elected officials encourage neighbors and residents to disrespect them, to disregard them, to ignore their presence. The fact that we have, leadership, or I should say lack of leadership, calling on the defunding and the abolishing of law enforcement is absolutely insane. If anything, what we need now, and it's things that we're fighting for every day, is we need more funding for the police. You want to focus on community policing? Well, they need resources to do that. You want to take illegal firearms off the street? You need resources to do that. You want to battle the fentanyl epidemic that we're facing? Well, you need resources to do that. And it's not about taking funding away. It's about giving them more funding. So the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights was something that was supported, and thankfully there was a bipartisan group that supported my efforts on the House floor when it passed. And it really gives law enforcement the tools that they need in order to effectively do their job. And what it also does, and what our hope was, is to encourage states to start doing the same. I mean, places like New York, where they've totally turned their back on law enforcement, and we saw our state legislature, our Senate, our Assembly, and our governor fully support the cashless bail and criminal justice reform, and basically paint issues with a broad brush, never once talking to law enforcement and asking their what they thought about it. And we've seen the devastating results of it. Our streets are less safe. The quality of life in New York City has plummeted. There are empty storefronts in areas which used to you couldn't even get real estate. The cops are not happy. They don't have the ability to do the job that they want to do effectively. So we need, on a federal level, and hoping that it trickles down to our state level, we need to be supporting law enforcement, and that's exactly what the Bill of Rights did.
Hey, Fidelity, how can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, That sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
A very, very hot issue is the qualified immunity. Now, as you know, that's a Supreme Court decision, and it's being attacked left and right by the far left. As you know, in New York State, the state challenged that and is trying to downplay it. And the city of New York piggybacked on that, and they're not defending cops using that qualified immunity defense. In your Bill of Rights, is it possible that you could build in and codify qualified immunity so it goes beyond the Supreme Court decision? In other words, it becomes permanent, the law of the land.
Yeah, we're working on that, and there's actually some other legislation being worked on to do just that. And like you said, there are cities and states that, it's almost like a race to see who could be more progressive and who could be more anti-qualified immunity, and it's working because we see in places that it's being challenged, it's being fought in court. But I will say that we have a decent amount of retired law enforcement as members of the House of Representatives, and I think that there are some pretty even-keeled senators on the other side of the House that would feel the same way. And I know that we are working on this on a few different angles.
Now, Congress as an institution has about a 20% approval rate. What can Congress do to improve that standing with Americans?
I think it's all about being out there, being upfront, and being honest. I think that, the three of us would probably agree that one of the things that that cops are about is about really telling it how it is and being upfront and being very clear on where they stand and what they're doing. And being transparent is important. Being out in the community, I think one of the things that we've seen for the last, I guess since Congress has been around, is that many members of Congress get elected, especially those in safe seats, and they spend more time in D.C. and traveling than they do back in their home state and in their home district. And that's one of the things that I've said. I always share the story as a rookie cop in the 7-3. I remember it was a super hot night, and I was patrolling. I had my windows up, and a veteran had knocked on the window and said, "What's with the windows up?" And I said, "Oh, it's hot out. I have the air conditioning on," and gave me the advice and said, you never, when you're patrolling these streets, you always have your windows down so you could hear the streets, smell the streets, and that's how you could do your best job. And I took that advice and brought it to government and politics and make sure that my windows are always down, my feet are always on the ground, and when we get done voting on, during a week in D.C., I really try to get the first plane back to New York, back to Long Island, because I know that I need to be out here talking to my constituents, attending events and making sure that they understand that their representation is not just some figure in Washington, but actually has his boots on the ground here. So I think to improve that approval rating, we need to be regular people. We need to have our boots on the ground. We need to understand that and make people understand that we are listening to them, that we're their voice. And listen, it doesn't help when you have complete frauds like George Santos representing a district to the north of me. That doesn't help. But, I'm going to do my best, just as I did in my last election as town councilman in a district that Democrats outnumber Republicans. I won with 70% of the vote, and I won because Democrats, Republicans, independents supported me, and I want to do the same thing as a member of Congress. And I think being available, being accessible, making sure that people understand that you hear them and that their voice is being heard in the halls of Congress is super important. And being honest and laying your head on your pillow every night, knowing that you worked as hard as you can all day for the people that sent you there, I think sends a strong message.
Congressman, you were the first sitting Republican congressman to call for George Santos' resignation, correct?
Yes, I was.
Congressman, what's your favorite thing about being a congressman?
Yeah, listen, I think it's getting to meet so many different people from so many walks of life. I think we would agree that New York and Long Island is a unique place, and when you get to share committees and go to different events and just spend time with people from all walks of life, from every corner of this country, both Democrat and Republican. I mean, about a month ago, I had the opportunity to travel with Speaker McCarthy. We went to Ireland, Israel, and Jordan. and I traveled with Republicans and Democrats, got to meet some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that I really didn't get a chance to spend time with yet. And, as much as the mainstream media makes it look like it's always a battle, there are a lot of things that we can agree on. And I think it's opportunities like that to meet with people that, represent very different districts, but may have very similar concerns or beliefs or things that they want to deliver for places just like Long Island.
If you can't say, what's your least favorite thing about Congress?
I think the least favorite is, I guess, twofold. Being away from home is difficult. Being on the road 4 to 5 days a week is not easy. And, listen, Washington, D.C. is a tough city. It's there are a lot of sharks, and I truly believe that one of the greatest preparations for being in D.C. especially. I mean, local politics is one thing, but when you get on that national scale and you see those sharks from all over this country, I really, truly believe that being a part of the NYPD and working in such a busy place with some of the greatest cops and investigators I think this job has seen is the best preparation that you could have.
You're the chairman of the subcommittee on emergency management and technology, and that places you at the forefront of artificial intelligence and other things like that. How do you see your role as far as affecting law enforcement in that position?
So I think we've taken like a real life experience approach on the subcommittee. One of the things that we're focused on is making sure that that it's not just big departments. Like I think we have seen that being part of the NYPD, we usually get the newest technology. It may not always work, but we get the newest technology. There's a lot of grant funding that comes to the big cities and big departments, and we've really made it a focus. And this is sort of a bipartisan effort to make sure that all of law enforcement throughout the country are getting what they need, not just the big ones. We want to make sure that the local villages, that the local sheriffs, that the smaller departments are getting their fair play at the tons of money that's out there. One of the other things that we're focused on is the future of FEMA. You look at when FEMA began, 20, 25 years ago, and the mission has remained the same. The mission of FEMA has remained the same. And I think we would look back at FEMA and you think about their response to natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, flooding, when we saw Hurricane Sandy. But now their mission remains the same, but it's much more expanded. We saw that as FEMA was on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. We see now as FEMA is standing on that front line of, caring for individuals coming across our southern border. So we're taking a very hardline approach at the future of FEMA to make sure that they have the resources that they need to deal with this ever-expanding mission. But while in the process, making sure that they're not neglecting what their original mission was. And a lot of that has to do with being an arm and being a resource for law enforcement.
This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
Do you see a role for law enforcement in making sure that this technology serves society and doesn't harm it? Because, there's a lot of opposition to some of these things like facial recognition and other areas where the Civil Liberties Union gets involved and they oppose it. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think there's a place for law enforcement because they're the ones that are dealing with this on an everyday basis. And like I said, much of the technology that we receive, it doesn't always work. But we are the ones that are really on the front lines to be able to articulate why something works, why it doesn't work, and how we could improve it or move on to a different technology. And I think that really collaborating with law enforcement on much of this is what's important. And I think very often, because they don't have a voice and because they're not represented, law enforcement sometimes doesn't have a seat at the table. And I think that's one of the reasons as to why it's so important to be electing members of law enforcement to all various positions in government, because we truly need that seat at the table. We need our voice to be heard. And who better to be that voice, who better to tell that story than someone who's worn the uniform?
Congressman, you mentioned Hurricane Sandy. I believe at that time you were the chief of Island Park Fire Department?
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How was that experience, being the chief of the fire department on the Hurricane Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, I've been as many of, I'm sure listening know, on Long Island, much of our fire service and EMS protection is handled by volunteers. So I've been serving as a member of the Island Park Fire Department since I was 18. So just approaching, I guess, 23 years. And I've been honored to serve in every capacity in the Island Park Fire Department. But from 2009 to 2016, I served as chief, and I was the incident commander during both Irene and Sandy. And Hurricane Sandy was by far and away one of the most devastating things that we've seen here on the South Shore, whether it was Long Beach or Island Park, parts of Oceanside, East Rockaway. I mean, we never expected the tidal surge that we saw. I mean, you know, there were people that lost everything. And I remember the night before, as the storm was hitting, we had a report of a house fire. We took a large army truck over there, and by the time we got to the house, the hydrants were covered. You know, the trucks had stalled, and we actually wound up driving the army truck through the house just to put the fire out so that it wouldn't spread down the block and we'd see issues like they saw in Breezy and other places. And I remember walking back arm in arm with men and women of the Island Park Fire Department to our firehouse, and really at that point understanding that this village and this community were going to be changed forever. And the next morning when the storm had come through, I remember standing in front of the firehouse, still water in the streets, and seeing my neighbors who I've known for my whole life literally walking down our main street of Long Beach Road in Island Park with baskets. And, you know, that was the only thing left of what they had in their home. And we've seen, you know, some of the very best of people and some of the worst of people come out of that storm. But I believe that we've rebuilt. We're starting to see a renaissance. But being the incident commander for that was one of the most interesting experiences of my life. You know, I had fire departments here from all over the country, working with different agencies, and we've seen, you know, it's been interesting. Obviously, the landscape and of communities that were devastated by the storm have changed forever. But it was also a learning experience, and I think it was one that, you know, for those of us in emergency management, whether the fire service, police department, you always ask yourself, are we better off today than we were the last time we saw an incident of this magnitude? And I think that there are places where we are better off today than we were, 10 years ago, but I think that there are places where we still need improvement, and that's one of the reasons why it's so great to be the chairman of that subcommittee on emergency management and technology, because it gives me, again, that real-life experience to affect change and hopefully help communities in other parts of this nation that are going to see natural disasters like we did.
Right, I agree. Now, Congressman, really, did you want to be a fireman or a cop?
I always wanted to be a cop, but being a part of the volunteer fire service is great. You know, we have over 70 departments here in Nassau County, and honestly, they've been some of my biggest supporters going into these elections. You know, you take my congressional election where in my district, Democrats outnumber Republicans by about 80,000. And we won it by 4 points. There is no doubt, and I thank them as much as I can, that, you know, my family and the fire service are definitely part of the reason why we were able to be victorious.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Speaking about Long Beach, now, the windmills, there's an issue out there with the windmill situation.
Absolutely.
The Empire windmills. What's your thoughts on that situation?
So, yeah, I mean, I think what we're facing with the windmills is really two fronts. But right now, what we're focused on is the fact that the company that has won this bid, Equinor, has just been a really bad neighbor. And that's what we're focused on right now. And I think you'd agree that it's very often that, you know, members of both parties agree. But there's a pretty unified front against the way Equinor has treated the barrier island in our communities. Just lack of transparency, lack of information, really thinking that they could just utilize their political clout and just bulldoze over our communities. And I think, when to make some local references, when it's the chatter at at either the saloon or Nolan's or some other places throughout the community, that people are talking about it. And I think that what we're going to do is we're going to be unified in saying that we want information from Equinor. We want to know what their plans are. And if they are not going to share that information with any of us, well, then we're going to stand very tall and make sure that they know that they're not welcomed here. I mean, most recently we saw that there was legislation for a very long story short, for a home rule message for the city of Long Beach. The city council flip-flopped, saying first they wanted it, then they didn't want it, then they wanted it again. And, we had our representation, Senator Canzoneri Fitzpatrick and Assemblyman Ari Brown. They held the line. They shelved the legislation to protect the barrier island. And the governor had a senator from Brooklyn, from Flatbush, carry the bill. And it passed. It passed the Senate and the Assembly. So it's very clear what we're fighting here. We're fighting an agenda. We're fighting a political agenda. But nonetheless, like I've said to many community members, Long Beach, Island Park, the barrier island, luckily we're good fighters and we're going to keep fighting.
Right, I agree. Speaking about city council, Brendan Finn, who he's running for city council, correct?
Yeah, Brendan Finn is a great guy. I believe retired first grader. I've actually known Brendan my entire life. He was married to a D'Esposito many years ago. But Brendan's a great guy. I know that him and his running mates are fighting the good fight, and that's a perfect example. Take Brendan Finn, who spent his life in the NYPD, comes from an NYPD family. His sister also NYPD, and then you got another guy who's running from the city of Long Beach, who I want to give a shout out to because he's just running a phenomenal campaign. But also wears the uniform, not the police department, but he's a lieutenant in the FDNY, works in Squad 288. And he's running for county legislature to replace Denise Ford, who, as we know, her husband died in the Father's Day fire back in 2001, and she's been a staunch advocate for first responders, police, fire. And now we have, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, having guys and girls who wore the uniform start to run for office is super important. And I'm so excited to see Brendan put his hat in the ring. Pat Mullaney, who's again going to run for or is running for the county legislature. I mean, good quality people who care about the community, who want to do what's right. And they're not doing it. I've always been taught public service is about serving the public, not having the public serve you. And if you have people who have done their careers in the police department, the fire department, they understand public service.
Right, I agree. They have our support as well. I know you're a golfer, so on August 21st, on Monday, August 21st, in Inwood Golf Course, which in Long Island, we're having a Stevie Van Zandt. It's Stevie Van Zandt's Policeman's Ball golf outing, our first annual. And actually, I'm involved in the committee as well. And what we do is we raise money for the widows and children of the NYPD, as well as Arms Wide Open, which is a foundation for police officers throughout the country with children who are disabled. So we've been doing that for years, but this is the first time we're going to actually have a golf outing. So it's August 21st, Monday in Inwood Golf Course, and I'm sure we'll be in touch, and I hope you can attend. That'd be great to see you.
Count me in for a foursome and a sponsorship.
Fantastic. Thank you, Congressman. And I'd also like to thank you again for, spending time with us. I know you're very busy, a lot of work to be done in Washington, and thank you for having someone like you down there.
Always got time for the cops. I'd love to talk more.
Thank you, Congressman. Onward and upward.
Okay. Stay safe, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Anthony D'Esposito, okay, good luck, be safe, and God bless. Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. Until next time, be safe out there. Thank you.